Hey everyone, I'm back and I'm doing another viewer request. This one is from Josie Robitaille via the YouTube channel John Foxhome. Check out their channel there and subscribe and all that good stuff. There might also be a link in the description below. This is about the PaleyFest 2006 first gathering of the fans. Let's do this. This is for the shooter panel of the PaleyFest 2006 first gathering of fans.
This is, to my knowledge, the first gathering of any Supernatural fans anywhere, so thank you to you, and give yourself a round of applause. Just quick story from the set of Supernatural, because it just happened last night, which is they shoot up in Vancouver, and they were shooting up at Stanley Park, or about to begin production, which is a public park up in Vancouver. We're about to start filming when they got a call that there was a man about 100, 200 yards from the film company with a handgun. And they called, Jared and Jensen, said, don't come to set. There's a man with a handgun.
Jeez.
And they shut down the whole production for 2 hours. They called in the police. They called in the SWAT team. They stormed. This is all true. Very true.
Gosh.
This happened last night. They all stormed Stanley, SWAT team stormed Stanley Park looking for this man with a gun. And it turned out to be a member of our special effects crew. So... good times from the set of Supernatural.
That was brief, but that was funny. I'm glad that they take, those sort of security measures seriously, because yikes. This one's called Show Genesis of the PaleyFest 2006 with the first gathering of fans.
Kind of curious how this the idea for this series, the genesis of it, and how it evolved from concept to what we see on the screen.
Indeed.
For a really long time, I wanted to do a show about American folklore and urban legends. It's
Nice.
Kind of a subject that, even back to elementary school, I've been.
It's what you do when you live in Ohio.
As a matter of fact, my very
It's what
first
you do.
TV pitch when I first started in town, when I was 23, 24, was an urban legend show, and I kept trying different versions of it and kept getting smacked down. I tried to do it as an anthology, and then I had this idea of like a bunch of reporters in a van, like Scooby-Doo style. All these sort of terrible ideas, and then I was working with Warner Brothers.
Probably what inspired
just come
Ghostfacers
off
a little bit.
Tarzan. And and they said, what show would you want to do? And I said, well, an urban legend show. And they said, well, what's the concept? And I had this really long, elaborate storyline that I'd spent weeks and weeks on about a reporter. And it was almost exactly Night Stalker, which is hilarious. They kind of looked at me and they were like, nah. They're like, any other, what else? And I said, well, because I literally scribbled it in my notebook the day before, which was, I said, well, it could be like Route 66, like 2 guys on a road trip. And they're like, we love that, do that. And so it just kind of came out of nowhere and just sort of developed from there. And it turned out to be just the right, the right way into this show, because they can just drive it. The boys could just drive in and out of a different horror movie every week. So.
Did you at that point know, in terms of characters, who those 2 guys were? How did this whole family element, which is so important to the show? Even Jared says to the girl in this episode, I've got to go back because it's my family. How did that whole family aspect?
Just, you write what you know, and I'm from a very close-knit family, and I have a big brother. I have, a lot of, really great friends, and just, sort of the way guys talk and the way they communicate without ever really communicating anything. And it kind of grew out of that, and so I knew I wanted to do, in terms of the characters, I knew I wanted, the little brother to be conflicted and have a lot of the angst and problems, which I threw right to Jared. And I wanted a big brother to just be a total smartass. That's how I started, with the genre and it's sort of out there, it really needs like a grounding influence, and to ground the show into
Yeah.
family and elements of family, and that, you know, the care that these brothers have for each other really helps us, because these two guys. Big hug, big hug.
Just pour it in the glass of water. Pour it in the glass of water.
Yeah, because these two guys, I mean, the relationship they have, I mean, sometimes we have, you know, good subject matter, and sometimes, you know, we don't.
It's interesting hearing his whole process and how, you know, growing up, he was obsessed with all that stuff, which is very, you know, me too. I think it's very much kind of this like mind factor of people who grew up in the Midwest. A lot of like scary movies and stuff tend to take place in Ohio for a reason, because there's just something super creepy about that area. I remember as a kid, I used to read those books, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which they later turned into a movie. And I'm sure that there's a lot of that was based on that area, whether it be Indiana or Ohio or whatever. And there's even Scary Stories of Ohio. There's all these books and there's all this lore and all these movies that were super popular in that part of the country. And so growing up, I know what he's talking about. And then also, I totally understand the vibe of the siblings. In fact, every time I watch Supernatural with Missy, I often think, this is so weird how accurate it often is. Down to the clothing, down to the way they talk, everything about it is kind of sometimes unfortunately true, and other times fortunately true. I think it's interesting when he brought it up about how he presented it to Warner Brothers and how they were kind of like not interested until suddenly he threw in the road trip dynamic. And a lot of shows tend to become successful and become popular, all because they start with an initial concept that they've got it all kind of planned out. And it's when you just do those little tweaks that shift everything that they can still stay with the original kind of idea, but it goes in a different direction that works. And I understand that. I'm working on a script right now that as of late, because of this show actually, it inspired that last little fix I needed that really has pushed it in a direction that's, I understand where he came from. And I understand because there was this interview back with Amy Sherman Palladino when she was trying to get her show Gilmore Girls to become a show. And it was really hard to sell them on it. The only thing she could think of was last minute. She had no idea about Stars Hollow. She had no plan on all this stuff. All she thought was, there's this town I like, and it inspired me, and I want to write a show technically about a town, but at the same time, I don't have like a story there outside of this cute town that she saw in Connecticut. So what she presented was the town initially, not realizing what it would turn into. And then she didn't have anything else to work from. And so then they were curious and they were allowing her to elaborate, but she didn't really know what she was doing. And the first thing that came to her mind for some reason was the idea of a young mother who had a child at a young age. And that is why and what blossomed and became Gilmore Girls, the series, which also, of course, Jared Padalecki was on. I think it's really awesome to hear the whole like backstory because it's kind of grounding and relatable. You know, part of making anything happen, whether it's good or bad, is just following through on it and working your butt off to make it happen. And that's why this show exists. And I've talked about this in other videos, but it's so true. Like the entertainment industry is really hard because, you know, we get to be passionate about these things, but at the same time, people are also passionate and it may not be in the same way. So it's a challenging world, but it is a realistic one. And it's cool to hear a perspective of someone who wasn't from the industry originally, got himself into the industry. I would love to hear the whole backstory on Eric Kripke, like his whole history. Eric Kripke, make a masterclass. Many people may not know who you are, but I think it would be pretty worthwhile. I wish that he could have elaborated even further, but it was really neat to hear what I heard in all of this. And hopefully someday I will be in Eric Kripke's shoes and y'all will be fans of whatever I put out. So anyway, it's nice to hear. So that's all. Anyway, let's move on. This one is about Kim Manners and Bugs from PaleyFest 2006, which is the first gathering of the fans.
How about everyone else on the panel? Kim, we could start with you and talk about how you became involved with Supernatural?
I read for Sam.
Did everybody read for Sam?
David Nutter, who directed the pilot, is a good friend. He did season 1 of X-Files, and he asked if I would do a favor and come in and do 1 episode, because I was kind of semi-retired after X-Files. Very semi-retired. And I came in and did a show called Dead in the Water. Enjoyed myself, fell in love with Jan and Dean, or is it Sam and Dean? And I was driving home to my home in Missouri, and they called me and said, we want you to come on as a part of the team, and I turned around, and here I am. So I'm having a good time.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, I don't know what we do without Kim up there. He's unbelievable.
John?
I know what you do. You get another guy.
There is no other guy.
Not true. No other.
There is no other guy named Kim.
It's really interesting. That's true. That's true.
You know, if this whole thing fails, you guys can go right into stand-up.
I don't want to stand up to him. I stand up in apple boxes all the time.
I'm pretty lazy. I'd rather sit.
John,
Meanwhile, what
Meanwhile.
what he doesn't know, what he didn't know about this whole process is that after we had him direct, I guess that was our 4th episode. We were on the pilot with David Nutter, Wendigo with David Nutter, Hookman with David Jackson, and then Kim came in, and immediately, I think, from day 1, we were on the phone with everybody. We were on the phone with Peter and with Eric and saying, this guy is incredible. Who is this guy? And David Nutter had sort of given him this very sort of mysterious, you'll love Kim kind of sentence at the very beginning, because we were going over this list of 7, very Jedi. Yeah, it was like, who is Kim? Who is this guy? Oh, I knew him from this. Who is Kim Manners? You'll love Kim Manners. And sure enough, we were like, what? And he came on, and he was just incredible. And he was just incredible. And can I borrow?
Yeah.
And
Wow.
and so we basically begged and pleaded to get him.
A job, just a job. That's all I wanted.
He was hungry. He was,
It seems
He kept trying
weird,
to bite my arm.
because coming off of X-Files.
I don't want to embarrass Kim,
Shouldn't
but
be
what
hard
is so
for him.
incredible about him?
About
him.
who?
Well, I think that Jared and I we just responded well to him. I mean, he directed in a fashion that we really liked, and it was kind of a set where guys could be guys, and he wasn't someone who directed behind a screen with a telephone somewhere in L.A. and was like, doing over and over, and then a close up and a close up, and let's get out of here and move on to the next set. He was in there, and a story about another episode that he directed, Bugs. This was a scene where we had to get in.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. We get in this tiny little room with 65,000 bees, and the whole camera crew and the sound crew, and everybody's got full bee outfits on, and then they're like, "All right, Jared Jensen, hop on in."
And don't swat them because it makes them angry.
And I'll give it to Kim. He said, you know what? If you guys don't have bee suits on, I'm not either. And he went in there with shorts and a T-shirt and a monitor, and sat down on a box and directed us from inside the room.
Kudos to him.
Our faces. It's just it's that kind of relationship with Kim.
That's cool.
I think it's really interesting how he was pretty much retired and then they asked him to come back, and also A, X-Files, that makes a lot of sense, but B, like, how interesting that this show uses this same director throughout all of this, and apparently producer to some degree. It's just kind of fascinating to me because, like, most shows don't keep the same director for more than an episode or 2 tops, and sometimes they'll bring other directors back and they'll recycle them, but it seems like this show really uses mostly the same director most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time, and I think that's really kind of cool because shows are, in many ways, they're kind of like a cinematic universe or a television universe or whatever, in the sense that you have different creative minds from all different places and backgrounds and experiences producing different types of episodes. And sometimes they'll shuffle through, like, a queue of the same, like, grouping of directors. But this seems kind of interesting, the fact that they were like, yeah, no, this is our guy and we're gonna stick with him. So I thought that was really cool. And it's so funny that when they mentioned Bugs and how he's just like, deep down, clearly he sees that as a huge failure on his career. But I think in the grand scheme of things, if you look at everything that he clearly has done, that was one minor setback. No one's perfect. And overall, he's a phenomenal director. So that was really cool for them to highlight said thing. So this was super naturally. Who would ever use adorable puppies to get people to want to like our channel, subscribe, and stay notified?
And maybe even go over to Patreon and become a subscriber there and support us if we watch Winchester.
Support these little cutie
Oh,
boys.
to buy them treaties and such. Oh.